Hello, I'm Edward Goodliffe, the author of Nailed It, the story of the Granum Gripper. I'd like to take this opportunity to give you some background of how this book came to be written. Well, I suppose when I think about it, it goes back a very long way to when I was a boy and I used to hear my father on numerous occasions telling wonderful stories about his early days in business. And they were wonderful stories, and quite often at the end of it, people would say, "Oh, that was so interesting, Tom, I enjoyed your story." And he'd say, "Well, there were so many things that happened, I could write a book about it." And you know what? He never did write a book. And I thought about that a lot after he died and gone. And from 1975 through to 1985, I lived through an incredible period when I migrated from Britain, went to Alberta and set up a nail factory. Grant, my business partner, Jane, my girlfriend, and I headed from London and headed out to Granum, Alberta. Granum being just a little town on the prairie of 325 people. And we set up a nail factory. We knew absolutely nothing about making nails, and yet we managed to set up a nail factory and make it work. And we did all sorts of incredible things over that 10-year period, and we got effectively driven out of business and moved on to other things. And I look back on that time and think, well, it was extraordinary, and really we should preserve the memory of what happened. So I thought about it and didn't really get round to doing anything. And then in 2010, Granum had its 100-year anniversary. And we went back down to Granum to join in with the festivities, and the place had changed a lot in the years we'd been away. And in actual fact, most of the people we knew at that time were dead. And there were a lot of newcomers, and talking to people there, a lot of people said to me, "What's your connection to Granum?" And so I'd say, "Well, I used to run the nail factory." And they said, "Nail factory? What nail factory?" Because of course they had no idea there'd ever been a nail factory. And the realization came to me that if I didn't do something about recording this, it would all be lost and gone forever. So I started writing down a few interesting moments. Like in the book you'll see a story about Maynard's quick haircut, and I wrote that little story down, and a couple of other small things, and I sent it off to various people and said, "Could you please read through what I've written here and see if it's worthy of making a small book?" Well, nobody got back to me, and so I sent it to a few more people, and again nobody got back to me. So I assumed that it was just way too boring, and I shelved the project until December 2018. And then in December 2018, I was in California at the Freedom Force International Annual Congress, and Ken was running the filming unit there. He was filming the event, and I was just chatting with him, and he said to me that he'd published a book. Well, I thought, published a book? My goodness, he published a book. How did you do that, Ken? And so I found out that he had self-published. And I thought, wow, well, if he can do it, I can do it. So while I was there, G. Edward Griffin, who heads up Freedom Force International, I asked him if he'd be good enough to have a look at a couple of stories that I'd written about the Granum Gripper. Just the first chapter. And he said, "Oh yes, I'll have a look at it, just send it on to me." Well, I found out later that he was not at all impressed with the idea of writing a book about making nails, because he thought it was so boring nobody'd possibly be interested. But anyway, I sent it to him, and he didn't make any comment other than to say, "Send me the next chapter." So I got working on that, and I sent him the next chapter by email, and he got back to me and said, "Keep sending them." So I sent the third chapter. Well, then I got a very short message that said, "This is good stuff." Well, naturally coming from him, I thought, wow, if it's good stuff, maybe I'm making some progress. So that was like rocket fuel to me, and I just plunged ahead, writing chapter after chapter, and I came to the point in the book where the nail factory closed down, and Edward Griffin wrote back to me, "Don't stop here, keep going." And so I thought about it, and I carried on for a couple more chapters, and I finally finished the book. Well, I hadn't told you about how I came across the self-publishers, but what I did is I searched to find a self-publishing outfit and came across Outskirts Press because I'd heard that they did a good job, and so I hired them to produce the book for me, to publish the book for me. And as far as I can see, they've done a wonderful job. And G. Edward Griffin agreed to write the foreword for me, and I managed to get David Dees to do the cover for me, and I think I've turned out a good book. But I must admit, by the time it was published, only Edward Griffin had read it and nobody else. And so I was a little apprehensive as to whether people would enjoy reading it. But as the first few months have gone by, I have had reviews from people that have read the book, and I'm greatly relieved to hear people telling me that they thoroughly enjoyed it and that they found it uplifting and it made them laugh. Well, if it made them laugh, I'm pleased about that, and I'm rather hoping that you will dare to buy my book and see if it makes you laugh as well. With a bit of luck, by the time you come to the end, you will find it as an uplifting experience and you'll enjoy it. So please buy my book. Thank you for listening.